Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. We got hammered in our first attempt at Malvin Beastmaker and Hero Realms last week, so we're going to go to a very different game today. Tonight we're going to play a suburban roll and write called Welcome To from Blue Cocker Games. Our goal here is to make the best suburb we can based on victory points. We're also going to do another play-along video with this game. You're probably asking right now, Phoenix Knight, what do you mean by a play-along video? Well, I did a play-along of this game late last year. So how that'll be able to work is you guys will actually be able to play along with this game. So I'll provide a link to the score sheet from Blue Cocker Games in the description down below, so you can see how you do. And I'm curious to see what scores you guys get in the comments section. Anyway, let's go ahead and set up the game, so we need to take a quick look at the cards. This card is actually relevant to the solo mode, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So the rest of the cards are actually numbered 1 through 15, and those numbers are what you'll use to build your suburb. So you'll be able to so you have to build sequentially, and that'll make more sense when we actually take a look at the score sheet. So if you start with like a 1 on the left, then you go to a 3, you can't put a 2 on in subsequent lots on the suburb. But like I said, that'll make more sense when we actually take a look at the score sheet. So the game ends, and actually we'll come back to the game end later. So here are our cards. So each card will actually have a number and an effect on them. Like I said, the number is 1 through 15. This one has a pool on it, so if you happen to build this lot or this number in a lot with a pool, you can circle the pool and that'll give you extra victory points. Now, I did mention that you can't repeat numbers, but this BIS effect, which actually looks like that on the back, lets you repeat that, but that'll affect your victory points at the end of the game. There's what the pool looks like on the back. Then we've got fences, which you'll use to subdivide your plots, depending on what plots we're going for. And that's what it looks like on the back. Then we've got these temp agencies, which if you use this for the effect, you can either increase or decrease the number by up to 2. And in the solo mode, you actually need to use at least 7 of those to get points for that. That's what it'll look like on the back. Then we've got these, what look like graphs with an arrow going up. So these you'll use to strengthen an estate size. So so depending on the plans, you may want to use that to strengthen the estate sizes that you're going to need. Finally, we've got this park, which there's what that looks like on the back. So each group in the suburb will actually have a number of parks on it, and I'll point that out when we get over to the score sheet as well. You'll cross off the leftmost one of those, and then whatever you have left visible, you'll score at the end of the game. And then this card is relevant in the solo mode, in that once we hit this point, all of the plans will be considered approved at that point. So each plan and I'll point this out more when we get to the plans, which we're going to next. But each plan will have 2 point values on it. So you'll have a point value that you'll score before the plans are approved, and then you'll have one that's scored after. So speaking of the plans, let's bring those into shot next, and we'll determine what plans we're trying to build today. So these are our plans that we potentially could have to build. We've got a level 1 plan, then a level 2, finally a level 3. Now, it might be a little bit hard to see, so I'll bring a plan up in shot so you can see, but that's the point value you'd score if the plan is built before it's considered approved, and that's the point value you'd get if it's built after it's considered approved. So the way we're going to determine the plan is I've got 3d6 out in different colors. So we're going to use a red die like this that's already in the cup to determine the level 1 plan, blue die for level 2, and then a red die like in that style for level 3. And then 1 through 6 on each plan, left to right. All right, so we want plan 5 from level 1, 4 from level 2, and 5. No, we want level 5. Oh no, I was right. We want 5 from level 1, 4 from level 2, and 4 from level 3. So the rest of these can go back The rest of these can go back to the box. So I'll just get those out of the way. The Dice Tower and Ever Faithful Assistant, which we can bring that out of shot. And then we'll take a look at our 3 plans. So our level 1 plan, we want 2 groups of 5 houses. We get 8 points if we score it before the plans are considered approved, and 4 if we score it after. Then level 2 actually is the next one we want to look at, another 8-4 plan. We want a group of 3, then a group of 6. Then for plan 3, we want a 2 and then a 5, scoring 7 points if it's built before they're considered approved, 3 points if they're built after. So those are our 3 plans. I can get the Dice Tower out of shot, and then we'll actually go over to the board. Actually, I'm going to finish doing setup first with the deck, and then we'll come back with the board, and we'll take a first look at the score sheet. Here's our first look at the score sheet. It might be a little bit hard to see, but we are looking to build a much more peaceful version of Arkham. If you've been around the channel for any length of time, you know that Arkham is usually one of the most dangerous places I go to. So we're going to try to build a more peaceful version of it. But you can see here on the score sheet that we've got these sets of houses here. We've got actually 3 sets. So once again, if I put a 1 down here, let's say I put like a 5 up here, for example, anything to the left of it would have to be smaller, and then anything to the right would have to be larger. Also, we've got the parks up here that I was talking about earlier. When you build a park, you can actually cross off, I believe, and on the street you built on. The pool has to be in the same property, so if I say build a 3 pool here, I can circle the pool and then cross off the lowest uncrossed pool. Fence can go anywhere, it doesn't have to be on the street you built on. The BIS will let you duplicate any slot, but that will once again subtract from your victory points. You'll take a reduction on that at the end of the game. The temp agency gets crossed off here, and in the solo game you do have to use at least 7 to get 7 points on that, but you can use that to increase. The estate strengthener will make your estates stronger, so depending on how many of a completed estate you have, and I'll probably point this out a little bit earlier I'll probably point this out when we get early into the game, but an estate is considered complete when you have a fence in and all of the units in that group are filled in. So that's that, and then we've got our building permit refusals over here. So the game actually ends in one of 4 ways in the solo game. It can end when a player builds all their houses, which in the solo mode probably isn't happening. It can also end when a player builds all 3 city plans, when somebody takes 3 building permit refusals. The way you take a building permit refusal is if you can't build one of the 3 houses, you have to take a building permit refusal, or the game ends when this deck runs out. So those are the ways the game can end. Once again, I've got 2 dice here so I can note what I'm using. I'll use red for number and blue for effect. That'll make more sense when we get into the game, which I think we're ready to get into now. So let's go ahead and jump into this playthrough. If you're playing along with me and you need some more time to consider your additional move, feel free to pause the video at any point during this, so you can consider your move, and then just jump right back in whenever you're ready to rejoin. So let's take a look at our first 3 possible houses. So on a pool we find a 13. On a fence we find a 6. And on a park we find a 7. So what do I want to do here? There are no pools really in the middle where I would like them, and I do want to start getting fences early. So Once again, we'll go red for number, blue for effect. And I'm going to make a note of that for me just so I can keep it straight. Red equals number, blue equals effect. So given that we need a lot of 5s, I want to get a fence going right away. So I know I want to use the fence for the effect. The question is, what number do I actually want to use? I think I'm going to take the 13, actually. So I'm going to build the 13. Let's build that here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll put the fence in right there. That way I've got my 2 5s cordoned off for the... That way I've got my 2 5s cordoned off for the first plan. So we'll do it there. And now I can only go smaller than 13 to the left, bigger to the right. So on an estate strengthener we find a 9. Another estate strengthener gives us a 5. And another fence is a 15. So I think we'll go number effect. So I'll take a 15 as a... I'll take the 15 at the end of that row. And then since I look like I'm going to be wanting a lot of 5s, I'm going to go ahead and strengthen my 5 estates right away. So we can get those out of the way. Then next up on a fence we find an 8. On a BIS we find a 9. And on a fence, we find a 6. So I think I'm going to go number effect. So I'll put the 9. I'll put the 9 here. And the fence... I'll put a fence in here so I've got another 5 ready to go. Especially since we need 3 5s and I've got a 6 that I can potentially start into as well. So on another estate strengthener we find a 4. On a fence we find a 2. And on a BIS we find a 10. So... let's go number effect. So I'll put the 10 here, and I'll strengthen my 5s again. Now, you don't have to necessarily build on the first street in all of these estates. I just happen to be, because the numbers so far are lining up for me to do that. On a park we find a 6. On another park, we find an 8, and another estate strengthener gives us a 10. So I think I will go number effect. I'm probably going all in on the 5 estates on this one, given that our plans want 3 of those. So I'm already at 8 points for a completed 5 group. Anyway, our next 3 on a fence we find a 13. A BIS we find a 12. And on another estate strengthener we find a 14. Ooh, 2 numbers that I really want to be able to use. So I think we'll go... let's go number effect. All right, so 14 will go here. And then since I need a 3, I'll put that down here. I'm probably going to use this last row for my weird partitions on the other plans. But let's see what our next group is. On an estate strengthener, we find a 7. On a fence, we find a 5. And our first temp agency gives us a 3. So I probably need the temp agency here. So I'll go, well, I'll use the temp agency for the effect. And what number do I want? I think I want the 7, actually. And I don't even have to change it, is the beautiful thing here. And I've used my first temp agency. Now, even though I actually increased the number by even though I changed the number by 0, that still counts as using the temp agency. So our next 3 on an estate strengthener, we have an 8. On a fence, we find a 9. And on a pool, we find another 9. So now I'm probably going to need to start building on the second row. So I think here we're going to go... here, let's go... The question is, can I build a... I think I can actually build a pool. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, I can make this work. Number effect. So I'll put an 8. I'll put an 8 down here, which is locking me into fairly low numbers on that row. And then I can circle a pool and then cross off the lowest pool value. All right, so on an estate strengthener, we find a 2, then a park, we find a 5, and on another park, we find a 14. So here I think I will go number effect. So I will actually build a park. I'll put the 5 down here. 5 down here, that's a pretty terrible looking 5, but I'm also at kind of a weird angle to it from here. So those can leave the board. And I've got 2 numbers until I can complete my first plan. So on a fence we find an 11, which I can work with. On a park, we find a 12, and a temp agency is a 13. So I can use realistically, I can use almost anything here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm planning on finishing this right away. So let's go number effect. I'll put the 12 here, and then I've used a second temp agency. So that's my first 5 completed. I need a low number, and I can complete my number 1 plan. So those can go away. Our next 3 cards on a BIS, we find a 13. I said low numbers, deck, not high. Second up, on a pool, we find a 4. Okay, that I can use. And on a park, we'll find a 4. So in that case, I will go number effect. So 4 points there. I'll cross off the next park here. And this street's now completely done, but this number 1 plan is also approved. So I will score the 8 points for that. If you're getting to it if you get to it after this point, then you actually only get the 4 points for that. I did forget to mention that. So we can move those out, and I can actually go ahead and score the parks for the first street as well. So I'm going to score 4 points for that at the end of the game. Love to see another estate strengthener here. All right, so on a fence we find a 7, temp agency, a 6, and on a pool we find another 7. So I'm going to use the temp agency for the effect, and I think I'm stuck with I'm stuck with a 7 as a number, so either way. we'll put let's put the 7 here, and that'll be my third temp agency. All right, so on a park we find a 10, a state strengthener, we find a 7, and a temp agency is a 12. So let's go. So a 10 on a park, 7 on an estate strengthener, and a 12 on a temp agency. Let's go number effect, and I'll make the 7. Let's make the 7 a 6, and that'll be my 4th temp agency. Then on another temp agency we find a 4, which I probably need for the number. On a pool, we find a 3. Okay, that gives me some options. And on a park, we find a 7. So so unless I put the 7 down here, I don't want the 7 for the number. Excuse me. So let's go. Let's go number effect. So I'm going to make the 3 a 5, and that's my 5th temp agency. All right. Next set of 3 on a park we find a 2. On a pool we find a 10. And on another pool we find a 6. So here I think we'll go. I think we want number effect here. So I'll put the 2. I'll put the 2 down here, circle the pool, and that'll be another 3 points for me at the end of the game. So that can go away, and now I can complete another 5 potentially. But let's see what happens here. So on a park we find a 1. On an estate strengthener we find another 1. And on a park we find a 15. So here I think we'll go number effect. So I'll put the 15 all the way over here and build my first park on that 2nd street. And those can go away. And now we got our next set of 3. On a fence we find a 5, which can probably go on that 3rd street. On another fence, we find an 8 and a temp agency gives us a 10. So, I think we'll go. Let's go number effect, and we'll make the 5 into a 4. Put it down here, and that's our 6th. That's my 6th temp agency. 1 more, and I will actually score off of that. So our next group of 3. On a park we find a 9. On another park we find a 5. And on an estate strengthener we find a 12. So here I will go number effect. I'll put the 9 down here, and then I'll strengthen my 5s again since I've got 3 completed 5 estates, since I've got 3 completed 5 lots in my current suburb. I've got my other 5. I need to find a 2 here a group of 2 here pretty soon. So on an estate strengthener, we find a 15, which could go at the end of the 3rd street. On a temp agency, which if I take the temp agency, I would score off of the temp agencies at the end of the game. An 8, which I might do, and a fence is a 3. So let's go, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, that wouldn't work. So I think we'll go number effect, and I'll drop the 3 down to a 1, putting that here. And then that's my 7th temp agency, so I will score off of that. All right, so our next three lots, on a BIS we find an 8, which I'll probably need for the number. On a fence we find a 10. And on a park we find a 9. So let's go. Let's go number effect. So I'll build a park on that 3rd street. Actually, I'll build a park on whatever street I put the 10 on. I think I want the 10. Put the 10 there, 11. Yeah, that'll work. So I'll put the 10 here and build a park here. I don't know why I keep clicking that pen off. It's just a force of habit of mine. On an estate strengthener on our next 3, we find an 11. On a fence, we find another 11. And another estate strengthener, we find a 9. So let's go number effect, which I can actually complete plan 3 right now if I want to, but I think I'm going to try to use this as my 6 if I can. So I'm going to actually put the fence in there. I'm going to need 3 pretty high numbers to get to that 6 though, but we'll find out what happens. So on an estate strengthener we find a 5. That won't help me get to that 6 plan. On a park, we find an 11. That might be helpful. And a BIS is a 3. So not total rubbish, but mostly rubbish. Let's go number effect. So I'll put the 11 here. And then what estate do I want to strengthen? Since I think I'm going to get to 2, at least 1, 2, I want to strengthen that. And those can all go away. Our next group of 3, on a number we find, or not a number, an estate strengthener, we find an 8. Temp agency is a 9. And on a park, we have another 11. So if I want to continue working on that 6 plan, and I don't have any high numbers here, so that's pretty bad. Let's go, I think we have to go number effect, and I'll make the 11 a 12. So I've actually used 8 temp agencies now. Not that anything above 7 matters, but I needed that too much. So our next group of 3, on a park we find, or on a fence we find a 10, which will have to go on the 3rd street if I use it. On a BIS we find a 7. And in a state strengthener, right before plans get approved, we find a 6. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to finish the 6 lot before I get to approval point. So let's go. I could finish plan 3 though. That's tempting. Which I think will. Yeah, I think we will go ahead and finish plan 3. So let's go number effect. So I'll put the 7 there. And I'll build that fence there. And that 2 is now complete, so I can use the 2 and the 5 here for plan 3, and that will give me 7 points. All right, so I'll pull those off. And before I reveal our next 3, as I mentioned, so that plan's approved as well. So as I mentioned here, we do have the approved card now, so plans are considered approved. So now you only get 4 points if you score the... You don't only get the lower point value if you score plans now. But with that, before we get into the next group of 3, I need to take a small break. Looking at the board, we're actually not too terribly far from completing plan 2 and finishing the game. But let's see, we're also not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're also about to run out of cards in the deck. So I need to see numbers I can use. I need something high here and low here. Or I can take somewhat mid to low numbers here. But on a pool we find a 12, that's not great. On a repeat, we find a 6. And on a park, we find an 8. None of these are great, so I guess we'll go number effect. So I'll put a 6 down here and build a park here. Those can all get out of my way. All right, last 2 groups of 3. On a pool we find an 8, which I can't work with unless I find a very low number for a pool. On a fence I find a 1, which I can't use, and an estate strengthener is an 11, which I can sort of use. But we'll go... Well, we pretty much need to go number... Do I just go for points at this stage? Because point chasing right now would consist of me just going to build this random pool, which isn't great, but unless... Well, I can't use the 8 here because I have a 1 there, so basically I can't use either the 1 or the 8 for a number. The only number I can use is the 11. I could just go... I know I've got a fence coming up. Just maybe go... I think my best play here might be to just go effect and put a fence here. That would be another 3 points, especially if I don't think I'm finishing that plan anyway. Yeah, I think that's what we have to do here. So I think we'll go effect there. I'll put the... Wait. Okay, yeah. I put the 11 here, and then I put the fence here. And then these are the last 3 cards in the deck. So on a fence we find a 14, which I can put up here to complete my 6. On a BIS, we find a 4. And a temp agency, we find a 7. So what is going to be the most points here? I think the most points here is probably going... Problem is I don't particularly want either of the effects. I only care about the 14, but... Yeah, I think we'll just go number... effect, I guess. And I'll make that a 13 to complete that 6. But with that, the deck is empty, so now we're at the end of the game, which means it's time to move into endgame scoring. I did complete Plan 3 by the skin of my teeth, but I put it in the wrong place for scoring, so I didn't complete Plan 2, even though I came close. I missed it. I actually missed it by having to put a fence in here because I didn't get the numbers I needed when I needed them. So, scoring this out, I get 15 points for Arkham here because of the 2 plans I completed. 4, 4, and 2 for Parks, which is a total of 10 points in Parks. 6 points in Pools because I built 2. 7 because I used the minimum required number of temp agencies. Then looking at the estates, I didn't have any completed 1s. I had 2 completed 2s, so that's a total of 6 points. I didn't finish any 3s. The reason these 2 don't count as 1s is because I didn't complete them. I didn't put a fence in there to consider them completed groups. So I've got no completed 3s, no 4s. I completed 3 5s for 30 points. And I completed 1 6 for 6 points. Alright, so that's 42 points in estates. I didn't use any repeats and I didn't take any permit refusals. So my total here, let's see, 15, 25, 31, 38, 80. So my version of Arkham actually ended up at 80 points. We'll take a quick look at that. That's not a bad run through of it, actually. I don't remember what I scored in my previous play along of Welcome to, but that's my effort for Arkham this week, so that will do it for this play along video of Welcome to. This is going to be a very busy week on the channel. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, I'm going to be live with ID Jester on his channel, playing Gaia Project on Board Game Arena. I'll put a link to Jester's channel in the description down below, so stop by and say hi if you happen to have time. The next episode of Mystical Munchies I'm expecting to go up on Friday, as we make Quiet Hounds from our month's cookbook for the World of Warcraft New Flavors of Azeroth. And Sunday looks like it's going to be well, I'm also expecting a product unboxing before I get to Sunday. That will probably go up on Saturday, I'm thinking. It could go up either Friday or Saturday, but I've got to see how events play out. And then Sunday looks like it's going to be a double upload as well, as we have the second scenario for the spring campaign in Arkham Horror the card game, the Midnight Masks, along with the next round of upgrades. As for next week, we'll debut a brand new game on the channel as we play Lucidity, Six-Sided Nightmares. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.